What's up everyone, my name is Mistic and welcome to Mistic. Today we're reacting to a video by TierZoo, the Cryptid tier list. I don't really know anything about cryptids, except maybe like Bigfoot, if that counts. But let's see what they rank and if I know any and if you know any, and if we agree with the ranks or not. Let's get into it and check out the video down below.
This episode is sponsored by Brilliant.
Ooh.
Show me your moves.
Boon.
If you play this game for a while, you'll eventually hear about some builds that seem really far-fetched and possibly overpowered. Builds that a lot of players will claim to have seen, but have no evidence to back it up. That's right, today we're talking about cryptids. Do
I've
they
seen
exist?
the hat,
and more
man.
importantly, where would they be on the
If
tier
that
list?
counts.
If you unlock them
It
as a
was
playable
creepy.
class, would you even want to play as them?
Yeah.
There are some where the answer is an obvious yes, and some that might be more hype than power. And there are some
Okay.
I've even managed to figure out how to unlock myself. So prepare for some never-before shared secrets on these legendary builds. As always,
Yay.
we'll start from the bottom of the tier list and go up from there.
Okay.
So in my opinion, the worst cryptids are the ones unlocked by taking a well-known build and afflicting them with an appearance-altering disease.
Really?
One example of this is the Chupacabra. I used to think that they'd be quite overpowered because of the lifelink ability, until I figured out how to unlock them and saw how they really play. The legend goes that the Chupacabra, aka Goat Sucker, can heal itself by draining the HP of its bite victims. That's a load of nonsense. To unlock the Chupacabra, what you need to do is choose a canine build on the character select screen, and then intentionally get yourself infected by mange. You can do this by simply being in close proximity with another player with the same debuff, as it spreads quickly. Mange has a few effects. The first is a massive sanity debuff brought about by intense itching. The second is a sizable
That
buff
just
to
seems like
intimidation
me.
as a result of hair loss from all the scratching. These two together unlock the Chupacabra prestige class for the Coyote. However, aside from becoming scarier, it doesn't grant any more unique abilities. In fact, I'd say the cost to your sanity greatly outweighs the intimidation bonus.
But I
The
don't
same
have
can be
much
said about the
sanity.
Jackalope.
Ooh,
The Jackalope is touted as a rapid build equipped with antlers. Now, antlers are awesome tools, both for foraging and for defense. Their range allows you to pressure opponents from a distance, and their sharp prongs can inflict bonus damage on hit. Rabbits absolutely could benefit from having antlers, especially considering how oppressive they'd be in the raptor matchup. Unfortunately, that's not what's going on here. To play as a jackalope, you need to choose a rabbit build and then somehow acquire the Shope papilloma virus. The best way to do this is to be bitten on the face by a tick player. The virus creates protrusions that can resemble antlers, but in reality, they're tumors. So while the aesthetics might seem fun for a while, they're cutting your playthrough short by a huge margin in most cases. Next are the builds which get a lot of hype and don't have a fatal flaw, but I still don't think are necessarily top tier.
Okay.
The first is what I like to call the solo simian
Bigfoot.
build. This is the general name for rumored hominid builds like the Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti, Yowie, and Abominable
Yowie.
Snowman. They seem to be everywhere, and also nowhere. And I think there's a reason for that.
I think
Grade
you
8
misspelled
builds have
Yowie.
everything in common with these solo simians except for one thing.
Okay.
Team play. Even though this fabled character seems to have the same or possibly even higher base stats and abilities than the other apes, team play is what brought apes to the forefront of the meta. Foregoing that just seems like an objectively suboptimal play. And
Well,
so
we
I have to
don't
rate these
know
guys
if
lower
they're
than all the other
solo.
simians. Also
Maybe
in this
they just
section is the
got
Thunderbird.
alone.
In my Raptor tier list, I discussed the attributes that make for a strong aerial hunter, those being speed, agility, stealth, and power. Thunderbirds, being massive flying tanks, would not be suited to this playstyle at all. The largest playable flying birds are all scavenger types that use their large size to travel great distances easier.
Buying
The largest raptor
girlfriend.
build ever to make waves in the meta was Haast's Eagle, which managed to have a commanding lead in the New Zealand meta for a solid chunk of time. However, this build was by no means a Thunderbird. It
Are
was
there
actually
any,
smaller than modern-day Condor and
bat
Albatross
cryptids?
builds, and so as intimidating as a cloud-sized eagle would be, I don't think it would make for a very effective build. Okay, so now that we've covered the bad and average cryptids, let's finally get into ones I think would actually be really strong. In fact, it's my personal opinion that these cryptids are actually players who somehow avoided the sweeping bans put in place by the devs.
Ooh.
The first one is, of course, the Loch Ness
Nessie.
Monster. Plesiosaurs used to hold the #1 spot in the marine meta, way back during the Jurassic expansion.
Yeah.
They were much quicker and more agile than fish at the time, and since the devs hadn't introduced marine mammals to the game yet, they were totally uncontested.
Ooh.
If plesiosaurs were still playable today, they'd easily still be high tier. The tactic of using one's reach in order to attack a school of fish from afar
Has
is what
anyone
made them
seen
so
that, like,
dominant in the
Loch
past
Ness
metas,
monster
and this strategy
thing
is still employed by
movie?
builds like the swordfish and
Where that
sawfish
kid
today.
kind
In
of
fact,
has his
one of the
own
main
Loch
arguments
Ness.
against the existence of the Loch Ness Monster is that they're simply too strong for the lock server. They'd easily overpower and defeat every other player there, and eventually just end up starving because they'd have driven away the competition. If something like this build is actually playable, it's much more likely that it's an open ocean exclusive. And judging by the recent finding of a mysterious creature washing up on Georgia's shore, this seems to be the case. The last cryptid on our tier list today is another
real?
potential banhammer dodger, the jungle-dwelling reptile called Mokili Membe.
Mokili
Despite the fact that
Membe.
the devs removed sauropod builds from the game long ago, rumor has it that Mokili Membe is a secret playable character in the river biome of the Congo jungle. This is at least mildly plausible because the vast stretches of thick rainforests and deep swamps have actually blocked human data miners from exploring the area. One reason I find this build to be more plausible than Nessie is that Mokili Membe is speculated to be using the pygmy character trait.
So
This solves two
smaller.
problems at once. First, this gets around the problem I have with the Nessie build, in that they're so big and powerful that they'd annihilate all of their competition and end up starving. A pygmy sauropod would still be powerful, but there would still be enough loot for itself and other herbivores in the area. This also helps explain how it avoided the ban, seeing as pygmy builds often survive much longer than their full-sized counterparts, as seen with the pygmy mammoth that survived on the Aleutian Island servers up until fairly recently. Now, with that said, I've still never had the opportunity to play as this fabled character or even see one in game, so if any of you know how to unlock it, please share that in the comments. With the possible exception of Sasquatch, none of these cryptids really have the intelligence stats required to keep up with the current meta. And this could be contributing to why some of them have faded into legend.
Yeah.
Don't let this happen to you. By using the link in the description, you can level up your intelligence by actively solving science and math problems on Brilliant.org. Brilliant shows you how some of the high people that go to that link.
Let me know if there are any other cryptids, especially bat cryptids, so maybe I can try and spec into that. That might be cool, but I don't know if I agree with the rankings, but you know. Check out his video down below, and until next time, bye bye.